Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Quentin, and I'm the product manager in charge of GEO Analytics for Onclusive, and I will be guiding you through this session. I'm joined today by Théophile Gourmand, which is our Solution Consultant Director, and he will be leading the live demo later. Just a quick housekeeping, this session is being recorded. And if you have any question, you can use the Q&A tab at any time during the presentation, and we'll answer your question later at the end of the presentation. Today, the program is to cover what is GEO, why does it matter for PR and marketing team, as well as what is a problem that most teams face when it comes to GEO. And then Theo will walk you through a live demo. So let's go. The first question is, what is GEO? So as for me, I will admit it, I'm still a Google fan. So whenever I have a question, for example, I'm looking for the best running shoes for me, I will go to Google, I will look at the top sources, and then what I will do is I will read a few articles, and then based on that, I will decide, okay, what are the best running shoes for me? But most people nowadays, what they do is they will ask directly an AI engine, such as ChatGPT, go on it and just say, what are the best running shoes? So this is why it's very important today for brand to make sure that whenever a user asks those kind of questions, their brand appear in the answer, and also that they appear accurately, so that the way the brand and the product is depicted by AI is correct. GEO stands for Generative Engine Optimization. So it's a practice of optimizing your content to perform well in AI-powered search engines such as ChatGPT, Gemini, Grok, Claude, Perplexity, and so on. So performing well means what? Performing well means being visible, so being cited by the AI. This is a brand of running shoes you need to buy. Being perceived accurately. I want my product to be positioned by AI the way I want to position them as a brand manager, as a PR professional. And also, lastly, making sure that you are a trusted source. So making sure the articles from my website are the one used by LLM, because they are the one that will most positively influence the LLM in favor of my brand. GEO versus SEO. So actually, GEO is not going against SEO. It's actually complement SEO. And the reason is that whenever AI give an answer of what is the best running shoes, what they actually do is they also search on the web. But the domain they will be using in order to give their answer is completely different than the one used by SEO. So it's very important nowadays for a PR or marketing professional to make sure that they are aware of what are the domains that are ranking for SEO, but also what are the domains that are ranking for GEO. Crucially, just to give you a statistic, when we look at ChatGPT citation, less than 10% are using the top 10 results from Google. So that's why it's very primordial to know the domains that are important for GEO and the domains that are important for SEO. So where do LLM actually get their answer from? They get it from 3 to 4 different ways. The first one is the training data. So the data sets that have been fed to the LLM in order to constitute its base knowledge. So depending on the LLM, it will be different. For example, for ChatGPT, it uses Reddit heavily, but this is not the case for other LLM. Retrieval augmented regeneration, which is RAG, which means querying external database of knowledge in order to answer. So for example, asking Wikipedia for help. And then the third one, which is the one that are also very important for us, which is web results. So when you're asking for what are the best running shoes, it will actually go and look on the web in order to find articles that can help him define and determine what are the best running shoes. And this is why for your team, GEO means actually making sure that on all of those pillars, the content I choose, so it could be my own content or earned media content, is the one that is the best representing my brand in a positive way for the category I'm interested in. And this is why we're seeing actually quite a big shift, because AI search is really rewriting the consumer discovery. So I will give you an analogy. Let's say that Google is a librarian. So if I go to the library and I ask for the best running shoes, I will be recommended 5 different kind of books. And then I will read those books and say, okay, now I have the knowledge I need. This is the running shoes I need. In contrary, LLM is being given a piece of paper that say, this is the best running shoes. You should choose those one. So it's a totally different way to look at it. And the change it produces on the consumer is that actually a consumer that comes from an LLM sources is actually way further along the buying journey because he already know what he wants to buy. That makes him, according to some studies, 4 times more valuable than a consumer that come to your website from Google. Actually, today, 80% of consumers rely on AI written results or 40% or more of their searches. So it's very critical for brands to know how they appear in the LLM and to make sure they are visible. So this is really a new battlefield for PR com and marketing team because today 60% of the searches end without a click. So what does that mean? That means that even a consumer that is using Google and will look for best running shoes, 60% of the time is not even going to click on any of the URL of the top page. What the user will do is read the AI overview and based on this, decide, okay, I have all the info I need, I can quit. So you need to be present in this AI overview and your product need to be present in this AI overview. Because when audiences ask AI about your category, your brand should be the answer and it should be depicted accurately to how you want to position it. So this is what you have to keep in mind. The goal is for your brand to be cited and accurately summarized in AI responses as a trusted source. So you need to be able to push the content you choose, own and earn media content, to the LLM so that when they craft their answer, your brand is visible. And this will translate into sales impact and a stronger reputation. So who is GEO relevant for? Well, GEO is relevant for PR and com because your earned media is now the input to AI search. So you are at the forefront actually of influencing the AI results. So you have actually stronger power now with AI than before. Because managing your brand presence in AI answer is now a core PR function because the accurate representation, the positive sentiment, the quality citation is what's going to turn into sales at the end of the day. This is what's going to make me buy your running shoes instead of the competitor running shoes. So the PR team really hold the keys to AI visibility. But it also matters for marketing because it's another channel to look at on top of traditional media monitoring, on top of social listening, on top of broadcast. This is a new channel. Gartner actually predicts that the traditional search volume, so the volume on Google, for example, will drop 25% by the end of 2026. And this share will not disappear, but it will be captured by AI instead. So this is another measurement you need to have. This is another budget you need to prioritize, another ROI you need to look at to make sure that I invest to be visible in the LLM because that's where my user will be from yesterday, today, but also tomorrow. Actually, what surprises most the marketer is that Reddit, YouTube, online community are among the top sources from AI. So this will also inform your strategy, for example, your UGC strategy. This is where the visibility gap is. Because the problem that most teams face today is that the leadership is already asking for AI metrics, but the teams have no way to provide them without a tool. How do you want to do it today? You will want to run a manual prompt on ChatGPT, but you also need to run it on Gemini. But because user will use different variation of the prompt, you need to try different variation as well. But you also need to note down all the sources, and you need to do that for each market. each country, each language you are covering, which simply doesn't scale. That's why it's important and primordial today to have a tool that does that for you, that is able to tell you what are the metrics around my brand, what are the gaps that I'm seeing, and what are the sources I need to target in the future to make sure I move the needle and I improve those metrics and this coverage. And this is why we created Inclusive GEO Analytics. What does Inclusive GEO Analytics does is that it will track your brand and the way it appears in all your responses across the 5 major AI engines. So you understand what is AI telling about you, what are the competitive gaps, what are the visibility gap, and what are the sources that are associated with each, so you know where you can take action. The key distinction is that traditional monitoring tells you what the content that already exists. GEO Analytics will tell you what AI engines are saying about you and what are the sources that are used to say that about you, so that you know where is your action plan and where your potential reputation risk exists. So in this tool, we created a complete workflow where you have your brand identity and perception. What does AI say about me and why? You have your performance and benchmarking. So what are the metrics associated with my brand with different KPI? Theo will go into more details when we see the live demo. And also potentially the most important, the source actionability. What are the exact publications I need to target if I want to improve my visibility, if I want to improve the perception, the AI of my brand, of my product. So other will tell you what AI says, but we will tell you what you should do about it. So that's the main distinction with our competition. And now I think the most important is to see it in action. So I will hand it off to Theo, who will show you a live demo, and he's going to walk you through the platform. So Theo, over to you.
Thanks, Quentin, and hi everyone. You should be able to see my screen now. Is that correct? Quentin, can you confirm?
Yes, I can see the screen.
Okay, all right. So as Quentin said, some of you might have already tools, but some of you might not. And most likely, what you're doing if you're doing GEO manually is, I'm going to take the example of Toyota, is Toyota equipment for EVs. When I ask my question, it's going to give me a conversation, like an answer. So some people say yes, some people say no. So now I'm going to have some pros, some cons, and I can dive into all of that. Now, the question is, if, like Quentin said, if I have to now translate this in French potentially, or run this across all my LLMs, but also your boss asks you to show some ROI based on the action that you've done, but here you don't really have any metrics. So this is why we've put together our GEO platform, so we can have all of this together for you. In this example here, this is our GEO module in our unified product. So this is also the launch of our measure module on top of the mention, review, and contact, which enables us to kind of like start to show some advanced analytics. We also have a version for Inclusive Social, where you can see exactly the same results, just in a slightly different layout. In this case, we're looking at Toyota. So the way it works is once you define the brand, when you our AI models will recommend certain categories, which is how we're going to deep dive into key areas or aspects of the brands that you want to dive into. Toyota, we've chosen electric cars and SUVs. From there, our model will start to recommend the number and what the prompts should be. We have different types of prompts. We have our brand identity prompts, which are going to help us to better understand how the brand is perceived. We have visibility prompts. So those are open-ended questions around the categories, such as what is a good electric car? What SUV should I buy? Which is going to help us to understand, is the brand appearing in the answers that are in here? And so which kind of like denotes as far as visibility. We then have competitive prompts. Those are prompts where we are basically pitting brands against another. Tesla versus Toyota, what's the best EV? Hyundai, Kia, and Toyota, which SUV should I buy? And here, the AI is sort of forced to give us what is its recommendation, which we're using to drive some of our metrics that we're going to show you a bit later. And the last one is perception prompts, where here we're asking basically for an opinion. Is Toyota a good brand? Are they a good employer? How is the life over there? And how are their product like? And here we really want that opinion from the LLM so we can understand what's the sentiment towards the brand. So from there, now where we have our categories where our prompts, you can run this across multiple LLM based on your subscription, but here we're looking at ChatGPT, Gemini, and Grok in this example. We could also include Claude and Perplexity. And then you can look at the different countries that you are interested in. In this case, we're looking UK, US, France, Spain, and Italy. So you have a good coverage of different markets you want to look at. From there, the way we've organized the analysis and the insights that we've covered is behind the 3 pillars. So identity, performance, sources. It's sort of flowing with how marketing and PR people work, where first of all, you need to understand what's the perception of your brand, what's your brand identity according to the LLMs. From there, you better understand how you perceive. With the performance, we're getting into metrics, and this is where we're going to start to dive into the different categories, the different aspects of your brand, and you can really deep dive and sort of make a diagnosis of where do I need to act, where am I not as strong as in other areas, and where do I want to improve on this. This will always lead back to sources. Sources is what is feeding the AI. So this is basically what you can action on. So you know where you need to potentially create content when you're not visible, where you need to improve the content when it's not necessarily going in your direction, etc. Those sources, they'll always become basically your media list, where if you're on the unified product, you can look at contact and look at all of the journalists that you need to reach out. Once that you've created your campaigns and your action, you can then move back to mentions and review or include social if you're using that product to double check that the coverage is actually existing. And then you'll be able to come back to your report to see what are the changes. So at the moment, we're looking at the 2nd of June, but potentially we could say like 2 weeks ago, we started a campaign, and now I want to see the results and I want to prove the ROI to my bosses. So first with the identity, so Toyota is highly reliable, highly durable, good brand, strong resale value, very well perceived as a brand. Leader in hybrid technology, but a bit slow on the EV side, where especially the new model that was released is not so well received. That's interesting, and I understand this. We then break down that brand identity into 4 corners. So brand image, better understanding how is the brand really perceived. Employer branding, so do you have a bad reputation in terms of being an employer? Are your employees not saying great things about you, which could lead to reputational issues? How are you sitting on the ESG sustainability, if that's a focus? And how are you doing on your leadership? How are the leaders of the company perceived? In this case, everything is in the green. That's great. We could imagine that if we were looking at Tesla, the leadership part would not necessarily be as positive, potentially mixed review. Elon Musk is a controversial individual, so that could impact this. Whenever you click on any section, what we always do is lead back to the sources. So let me just choose an employer brand, for example. So positive outlook on the employer branding, and we see that the main sources that are used to kind of like understand this and output this by the LLM are Toyota's website. Something that's great is visible enough that the LLM can pick it up, and it's saying the right things. So it's generating that positive outlook. So that's a great case here. Now that you understand all of this, you also want to understand what are the concepts associated with your brand. This links back to the key messages, the values that your company has. So we can see that, so we saw that Toyota is slowly moving on to the EV segment. And we can see that one of the key concepts is obviously automotive, vehicle manufacturing, but then it's about electrified vehicles. And here we can see that term from when they started with the hybrid technology. It was not electrical vehicle, and so they said electrified vehicles, which then encompasses the EVs, the plug-in hybrid, and the pure hybrid. So you can see how all of that kind of like you understand, is your core messaging up there, and what are you naturally associated with? And then you can actually break down those different concepts. So we can see, 66% of the concepts are positive. And then we see, it's all about reliability, fiability in French, the hybrid segment. If you want to dive into this, you can actually click on it to understand, again, where is this good coverage, like this good outlook coming from? And you can see, we see some of the SUVs reviews from autoexpress.uk, whatcar.com. So again, you have that, you can always dive into the data to better understand where this is coming from. And this leads now that we better understand what's associated with the brand. We want to dive a bit further to kind of start to measure. So this is when we get to the performances. We have those 5 metrics. First, share of voice. So the idea is like, how often is the brand mentioned in the different answers from all of the prompts that we've sent? This here, we see that it's 7%, it's poor. It could be linked to some lack of coverage. I think also automotive market is fairly packed at the moment. There's a lot of brands, a lot of models. It's higher to have a good share of voice, but definitely here it seems to be on the low end. Visibility. Here we're looking at those category questions we were asking earlier. So what's a good electric car? Which SUV should I buy? And here we're looking that Toyota appears in almost every other answer. That's good. I think it could be better, but that's giving us, okay, so Toyota is being considered, and this is something that is important. Whenever it is being mentioned, and they are ranking, because we all know that LLMs, they love a list, Toyota seems to appear in number 9. This is okay. It's actually poor. We want to be higher in the list, but again, it's a competitive market. So considering it is something that we can focus on, but that's definitely something that we need to look into. What's interesting is in this competitive prompt I mentioned earlier, when we're pitting brands against each other, we are here seeing that in more than a third of the time, Toyota is the recommended brand to buy. So that's nice. We definitely want to increase this to make sure that people are just, okay, this is the car I need to buy. But this is good. This is something I want to look into. Like visibility is everything, but you want to make sure that you're the one that is picked up. And even further, you want to make sure that your visibility is being positive. If you're being talked about by the wrong things, that's not what you want. So here, the sentiment is going to help you to understand how well are you perceived. We can see that Toyota is very well perceived. This is linked to that durability, reliability, good cars that last a long while, and then you can resell without making too much of a loss. So now that you have your key metrics, we want to better understand, based on your different categories, where do you stand? So here on the left, we have the LLM choice. So are you being picked up as the recommended brand? And do you appear in the answers from the LLM? We can see that in the US, SUV category is doing extremely well. This is almost 100% of the time that Toyota is recommending us of SUV to buy. And in Spain, it's pretty similar, but a bit less recommendation, but still above 50%. This is great, with similar visibility. Now we look at Italy, France again. So clearly the SUV category is doing fairly well for Toyota. Now the question is, where are all of the one in the bottom? So we can see here, this is the electric car segment. Not only it is not often the recommended brand, especially like in the US, for example, it is never recommended to be an electric car to buy. In the UK, just below 50%, but also the visibility is lacking. Not in half of the answers, less than half the answers is Toyota appearing. So that means that without even going to is it recommended, it's just not even considered. So some of the areas that we understand, this is the category that we need to look into. So this graph is going to help you to understand strategically where is your brand based on the categories and the countries where it's staying, so you know which countries and which categories you need to focus on. And Everybody loves the brand ranking. You want to know where you stand. So here we can see Toyota number 2. Whenever you break this down, you'll be able to see the different models that are driving this. So we can see that for Toyota, the RRV4, which is their SUV, is doing very well, and it's driving that lovely positivity. We see that EV is at the bottom. It's not necessarily very visible versus Tesla or Hyundai, for example. Hyundai has the Ioniq 5, Ioniq 6, Kona Electric. So lots of like electric cars are at the top. So since this is clearly one of the changes that Toyota is making, they need to catch up. And this is kind of what keep the competitors up here. You don't get to choose what's in the list of competitors. The reason why is, as much as potentially in the UK, you have your own set of competitors that you think are relevant, this is what the LLM thinks is relevant. So it doesn't matter what you think, it matters what it thinks, and then what it's going to tell your consumers, your potential buyers, or people that are considering you. And those are the key brands that you're faring against. Like we don't see any BYD, we don't see any Chinese manufacturer, just because it doesn't seem like they've done the work of really being visible in LLMs. So that's really interesting, and we can dive into that. And like I said, we always lead back to the sources. We've categorized them so you know where to focus. So if you've got your journalists, you know how you can contact them. Very interestingly here, so basically we rank them by how many times they've been used to feed one of the answers from the LLMs, and is it favorable or unfavorable? Well, I think it gets interesting. If we look at the corporate, we can see that the front website of Toyota is being picked up as a source to use for the answers. It is not necessarily favorable. This is not a problem where, like, it's basically saying that the LLM doesn't perceive the content to be very favorable. The Spanish one very much. So that could be maybe we need to tune the content that is on the web, on their blog, on their website, to make sure that it is pushing the right narrative and the right content to make sure that people then, the LLM will consider this as favorable, something that they'll use, and something that is going to help you. This is on the overview of your brand. Now I want to focus on key areas to better understand what I need to get into. So I'm going to look at the electric cars, and here I start always my identity. So the brand is strong, and that translates into the EV category. Historically focused on hybrid and a leader there, slowing the EV adoption with mixed reviews for the initial EV offering. Okay, so now I've got my overall understanding, and I can dive into this. We can see that the number of positive concepts are lower. And let me choose the UK very specifically, so we have some English focused content. Here we go. In the UK specifically, that positivity drops to 43%. Negativity jumps up to 57%. The first concept that is associated with Toyota and EVs in the UK is that the BZ4X has got mixed reviews. So this is clearly something that we need to work on, because the core values of the company are not translating strongly enough into this section, that it's being overtaken by the mixed and negative feelings. I can click on this, understand what are the sources that are feeding this narrative. We can see it's coming from Wikipedia, from autocar.uk. So I can look at that and see, okay, is this a matter of recreating coverage around the car by, potentially, releasing a new color, or like a new set of options, and maybe like an improvement version? Is it about like creating coverage of like how it is super clever in the way it is being innovative? So how do we make sure that we update this, and so it is not the main narrative around your segment? And more specifically, we can dive into the different prompts that we've sent. So all of those are recommended by models. You can definitely change them at the moment of setup. So here we're looking at the questions I was talking about in terms of visibility, right? So here, highest rated electric car. If I ask that question to ChatGPT, Toyota does not even appear. Similarly, in Gemini or in Grok, like just Toyota does not exist for those models in this segment. Most affordable electric car, again, there's just no appearance of the brand in this segment. So that's, first of all, you need to be able to be visible. And we can see that some of the sources cited are even like the website. So that's something that is not necessarily very difficult to create content around. But then there's also, you know, the news articles, the reviews, but clearly there's something to do there. Similarly, on the competitive set, we're asking, you know, Toyota versus Tesla, what is good? ChatGPT is not saying Toyota is the right one to go. Similarly for Gemini, similarly for Grok. If I look here, you'll see like this, basically Toyota is not being recommended as an EV. This speaks about like the content that is there. How do we content that is feeding the fact that, you know, this is actually a good consideration. It might not be the best car, but at the very least in terms of like, is this the best value car? So clear, okay, something that we understand we need to dive into. And what about the perception? So is Toyota a good choice for electric cars? We see ChatGPT says mixed review, because there's some questions about mixed reviews. It's just the EV adoption is just very slow and basically they're behind. In Toyota is similar, and in Grok is definitely negative. They're saying there's issue with the range, there's issue with the charging speeds. It's clearly a hybrid focused brand, not an EV focused brand. So basically don't go there. So again, this is interesting. We need to understand where is this coming from. This is coming from the BBC, it's coming from Autocar and The Guardian. So this is important because clearly we see that the narrative around this segment for Toyota is really bad, and they need to improve, because that could also potentially improve the brand perception overall by the LLM, which could definitely impact other categories as well. So with this, you really have, you know, your control center and everything that's been asked, how is it being answered, and what are the key narratives, the key terms and key messaging that we need to push. Now, if we look at the performance, we can see, okay, so actually on the EV segments, it is really not good. Tesla barely appears in most of the answers. When we ask very direct questions like which car should be considered, Toyota does not appear in the UK. Whenever there's a ranking, it's number 11. For me, you should be at least in top 5, maybe top 10. When you're at number 11, it's kind of like if you're on the second page of the Google search results, you probably don't exist. People will not go down all the way at the end of the list. Whenever we pit Toyota against another brand, they're just not being picked up. Like all the brands are always better. And we can see the sentiment has dropped down significantly. It's still positive overall. I think the brand identity is doing a lot of the heavy lifting, but it is barely positive at this point. And when we look at the UK specifically, we can see, so Tesla's were at the top, recommended more than 75% of the time. Volkswagen's not doing too bad. Kia, not really. Renault, not really. And we can see that those ones here lack visibility. So they're not being picked up and also not mentioned a lot. You can see that Tesla has the market for now, and so something that we can work on. We can also see that Toyota does not appear in this quadrant. So that's something they need. First of all, they need to work on visibility right there, so they can appear there, and then they need to work on improving and refining the content, so they're being the one that is considered. Again, as we said earlier, number 11 in the ranking, so Toyota does not appear here, and you can see how this data set of competitors has changed, because for this specific category, we're not looking at the same set of competitors. And so here we can see again what models are driving the conversation at the moment, and how is that affecting, and what are you competing against. When you need to do those, you know, like comparison content, you'll know which models you want to potentially benchmark against. And here we go back to the sources. What are the sources driving? How are they feeding the AI, and basically where do you need to focus your efforts on? You've got the full list. You can see what's favorable, what's not favorable. Clearly, we can see the segment is really bad for Toyota. So that's basically how it could. Hopefully, this is not your case. There's a bit more green in all of that. But it helps you to understand which areas you need to focus on. So the range and the charging speed of the car, the fact that your first model has got very mixed reviews, so it's not a great launch. So how do you change the narrative? How do you bring that in if you want to be stronger in this category? Ideally here, you're going to start to do campaigns, you're going to do activities. Would that be social, working with potentially YouTubers, creating content on Reddit, on the PR side, making sure that you are in these key publications and that you are improving the content of your blog so it is fitting the right narrative to the AI. And ideally, you get to see the other side and then see the improvements. And this is here where potentially we can look at the SUV category, where he said Toyota is consistently prized by external reliability and durability. So here we see, like, because this segment is a lot more positive, even the tone is a lot more excited and positive from the LLMs when talking about the brand. Very good with hybrid technology, strong resale value. Some of the interior is not perceived as high quality. The driving dynamics is not super strong. So they're seen as less engaging. But again, this is not a key negative issue. It's people wishing they would be better, they would feel nicer. But also Toyota is the price point as it is. So, but we can see, again, key concept starting with the brand: reliability, practicality, resale value, off-road capacity. And here we start to see some of those negatives, but they're further down below, and they're not overtaking the overall concept associated with the brand. So this is something a bit more where we want to see this. If I look at my visibility here, I can see that most trusted SUV, Toyota is #1 according to ChatGPT. And the sources that are filling this are, Click for Warranty, car magazines. So that's great. We can see that Gemini doesn't necessarily consider them. Grok says they're right there, they're just #2, so they're not necessarily the one to recommend. So here you can see this is like the sort of visibility that you want. You want to appear in there and make sure that you're being considered. In terms of competitive, Toyota versus Kia, which is better for SUV? ChatGPT says 1. Grok says 1. This is the brand that you should buy. Gemini says it's a bit more nuanced. So again, let's look at the sources, understand what's going on, and what do I need to do about that. Similarly here we go. Is Toyota better than Kia for SUVs? #1 across all models that we're looking at. So that's great. That's where you want to be. And that's the sort of changes that you want to present to your bosses to make sure that they understand this. And finally, the perception, it is positive, it is great. So you really see all of this. You can see your key metrics here have improved. Half of the time, Toyota is the LLM choice, very visible, extremely good sentiment. Toyota is the brand that is the most often recommended in the UK. They don't necessarily have the strongest visibility, but they're just being recommended. So again, we can see where that needs to be. Just more visibility is going to help us get Toyota to the right quadrant. One other thing I want to kind of like cover is whenever you see the sources, when you click on them, we actually give you more insights into where was that source mentioned, but you were not. So for which question? So when best SUV, what car is used to answer that question? Toyota was not mentioned. Okay, so that's something they need to work on. Where did you lost against specific competitors? So Toyota versus Kia versus Nissan, according to that source, you're not the winner. So you can really see where is that helping you, what are the key narrative, the sentiment issues that they're driving, and what model is using that source the most. So you also know what your impact is going to be. So this is our quick tool around our GEO offering. So as you can see, we try to make this as easy to use as possible to give you insights, key takeaways, things you can act on, and then use the other modules and products that we offer so you can actually follow that and create your campaigns, double check the coverage, and then come back to this so you can see the results and prove the ROI of what you've done. That's pretty much it on the demo side. So now we can jump into some questions. Let me have a look.
Yes, thank you so much, Theo. I will take over from this and share my screen. So we have a bit of time for some question. If we don't have the time to answer your question today, don't worry. We'll follow up directly after the session, and also the recording will be sent to you by email. But let's go through some questions. In the meantime, I'm showing a QR code. If you want a dedicated one-to-one demo that is tailored to your brand, because I know it's a new space, so it's very helpful to see it in the context of your brand. You can just scan the QR code, or you can visit onclusive.com, and you will have also a link there in order to ask for a demo. Okay, so let's go through some questions before we wrap it up. One of the questions is, how does it work for countries? So actually, it's very important when you create an analysis to set up the country you want to run the analysis for, because the question will be asking as if we were in this country. And this is very important to not create a bias on the result. For the same brand, the same category, so even if we are talking about Tesla electric car, the result in France and in Mexico will be totally different. The sources that are used are totally different as well. Another question is Google AI overview mode on the roadmap? So it's definitely on the roadmap, and especially because Google have been announcing that in the future, they will merge more and more their traditional searches and AI. So we will also be able to cover it. Are sources available across LLM? Yes. And that's the beauty of this tool, is that you can have a really high level view of what are the sources I need to target, but also have a more granular approach where you can apply some filter to some specific LLM. And as Theo showed, maybe for Gemini, you will have a great visibility, great reputation, but not for Claude. And you will be able to target specifically Claude to know what are the sources I need to impact for Claude. Okay, can we change the category? So similarly, that's something that you set up in the analysis, and you can totally change or add some. And it's very important because similarly to the country, depending on the category, your metrics and your sources will be different. For Tesla, they will be very strong in electric car, but they also make solar panel. And if you look at their visibility for solar panel, they are lagging behind. So you will be able to set up all your category to make sure for each of my country, each of my category, what's my brand positioning and how can I improve it? And I will take a last question. It is a very interesting question. So for a charity that want to understand its place in the GEO, where they are not producing a specific product or service, how does this work? So for this demo, we created it around a brand that everybody knows and everybody can easily understand, so cars and Toyota. But the GEO apply to any possible brand because we look at the perception. So in this case of the charity, what is the perception of my charity? What is being said by AI around my charity? Is this accurate? Is there some hallucination? And also understand when people are comparing me against other charity, what is being said and what are the sources being used. So if someone asks, oh, I want to donate to a charity that supports kids, I also want to make sure that my charity appear in the answer and accurately. So GEO tool is very flexible to your context, your industry, your countries, and your categories. And I think that's it for the question I have time to reply today. Thank you so much for joining us today and spending a bit of time to learn about GEO and our tool. As I said, if you ask some questions that I didn't have time to answer, I tried my best in the chat, but I could not answer them all. We will also reach out to you to answer your question, and do not hesitate to simply book a demo so we can have a one-on-one demonstration around your brand, around your country, and around your industry, which I think will really help to put GEO and what it can do for your brand in music. Thank you so much for your time.